Right, right. Look, we all procrastinate about different things, I'm sure.
I was going to procrastinate doing this session, but then I put it off instead.
So usually the way it works is it takes me a couple minutes after 1 o'clock to get everyone in, but I'm happy to, for the people that are here, just kind of let them know a little bit about what's going on. So Margot is speakers, procrastination, gain control of your workday is the topic, and she's a productivity coach. So Margot, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to start out with, and by the time you're done, I'm sure we can get the presentation going.
Sure. So again, my name is Margot Crawford, and I am a productivity coach and professional organizer. So I help people get more focused, organized, and productive at work. I've been in the industry for close to 20 years. And so I love to be able to share tips and techniques with you so that you can start having better days with the things that you need to do. I'm an avid surfer. So I took the two things that I loved, catching waves and productivity, and put them together. And that's why I named my business Wave Productivity. But it really speaks to what happens when my clients come to me and when we're first working together, because it feels like for them that they're holding back the tide, that there are these waves of overwhelm and stress with the amount of work that they have to do, where they don't feel like they have any control. And so what I do is, through coaching, get them out into those waters instead of fighting them, understanding them so that they can ride that wave and catch it and start having fun in the work that they do. There's a reason why they went into the industry, or the reason why you are going into your industry. And if you're doing it with a passion and a love, and that's dulled by stress and overwhelm, then you're not going to have really great days. And my job as a coach is to make sure that everyone is having great days at work.
Can't wait.
And Ken, while you're inviting more people in, I will just pop open my screen.
Sure. I mean,
And,
you can start anytime you want to. I'll just keep letting people in.
So I just want to check, can everyone on the screen see a slide that says overcome procrastination? Thumbs up? Got a thumbs up? Okay, great. And so I introduced myself. So for those of you who are just joining the call and may have joined in a little bit later, I'm Margot Crawford with Wave Productivity, and I'm a productivity coach and professional organizer. And what we're going to be talking about today is overcoming procrastination, ways that you can gain control of your workday. So you may have this small inner voice that says, I need to do this now, right now. I know this is the right time. And then there's a larger voice that takes over that says, you know, there's time tomorrow. I can wait. You know, it doesn't need to happen right now. I can kind of let up just whenever. It's all good. And you do that several days in a row. And what you find is that you're under a lot of stress. You've created that stress and you don't feel so good. Now, there was a study done at the University of Calgary. And that study was with a group of their students. So they gathered up a group of students. They studied how they handled studying for exams, how they approached writing papers, and how they did their homework. And they found that 95% of those students, 95% of those students procrastinated in the work that they needed to do to get their degree. And they said, well, if this is so pervasive at our school, If our students are transitioning to work in the workplace and they're experiencing this level of procrastination, what's happening at work in corporations? So they went in to look at workers in corporations and large offices and found that 1 out of 5 people will procrastinate. And what they found was with that 1 in 5 person, that the procrastination was so severe that they were at the brink of losing their job, that it affected them negatively in how people perceive them in the work that they did, and in the fact that many of their coworkers had lost confidence in the work that they were doing because they procrastinated. Now the joke is that we said 1 in 5, but the other 4 were really just late in getting their answers to the study group. So it was actually 5 in 5, right? And procrastination is no joke. But what that shows us is that we are all procrastinators. No one is immune to procrastination. I also want to add that in that study, one of the things that they found was not only were these students procrastinating, but it directly correlated to their performance. So the students who procrastinated were also the students that they found had lower grades, had poor performance, but it was actually linked to their health. And they found that these students had more of an increase in illness. So kind of like wrap your head around that. Like it can actually cause so much stress that it affects your immune system. And just as an adult, not in college, right? These procrastination leads to other bad behaviors like overeating, gambling, those types of like heavier issues that some of us have to deal with. So the goal here is in the next 45 minutes or so, you will not walk out of here and never experience procrastination again. I'm sorry, but I just want to lay it out, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. The truth is, you will walk away from this talk with some really clear next steps, some takeaways that you can implement right away when you feel procrastination coming on. And it'll make a difference in how you move forward and in the work that you do. I also want to let you know that this presentation is set up in different learning styles. So if you're an auditory learner, you're very lucky. You get to sit back, relax, listen. Unfortunately, I'm not an auditory learner, and most people aren't auditory learners. We are visual learners, and the PowerPoint is up on the screen for our visual learners. Take a look at that picture, burn it into your memory, because even weeks later, when you're thinking about the presentation, visual learners can think about the pictures that they saw, and those topics and techniques will naturally come back to them. Now, if you're a kinesthetic learner, where you have to do some work to understand it, grab a pen, take some notes, doodle, draw, whatever it is you need to do to ingrain the information. Another way to ingrain this information for whatever type of learner you are is to be part of a conversation, this conversation, so that you can understand procrastination a little bit better. I'll be asking some questions and you can throw your answers in the chat, but if you feel inclined and you want to hop off mute and actually answer the question, let's create a dialogue and make that happen. It makes the presentation so much more dynamic instead of me just blah, blah, blah the entire time, right? And also, I want to let you know, I have a gift for you. If you go to waveproductivity.com, I have an ebook that's available for you. And what that ebook does is it addresses productivity challenges. So I took a decade-long work that I had worked on with clients and really narrowed it down to what challenges they had, what techniques and tips would be helpful for those challenges, and some exercises to better understand your work style. So if you have any productivity challenges, you can get that ebook on waveproductivity.com and do the exercises so that you can understand yourself better. Another thing that we will do better today is really breaking down what we're talking about. So we're talking about why and how you procrastinate. We're going to be looking at some hurdles to getting things done. We'll be talking about some clear exercises and techniques that you can use. And oftentimes that people will think that procrastination is an enemy, but it can actually be your friend. When you can create healthy stress around a project or thing that you have to do, and you can use procrastination to leverage it, to make it so that you're doing the work in a more effective way, that is awesome. Let's do that. So we'll talk about some techniques and ways that you can do that for yourself. So I want to hear from you. What is it that you procrastinate on? What do you put off? If anyone wants to add that to the chat.
Come on, you guys must put something off.
And Ken, I'm not sure that I can see the chat.
Everything, tasks I don't enjoy doing, things I have no interest or passion in, paying bills, filing.
Paying bills is a big one, right?
Networking with strangers.
Margot, I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
It sounds like the word procrastination in general, in the English vocabulary, it has some negative connotation. Now, what happens, I happen to be, and all my life I have been, at the other end of the spectrum. Everything in my life is, if you can do it now and don't procrastinate, which I also find it to some extent negative, because I set myself up unrealistic expectations. My wife often tells me, you plan 120%, you're able to do 100 and you're unhappy with yourself. And I said, you're right. So I'm very much at the other end of the spectrum.
So I think that brings up a good point, Alex. Procrastination means pro, in favor of, and the crastinus is Latin, and that means for tomorrow. So to put in favor, tomorrow. And I think where the negative connotation or where that negative feeling comes in is how procrastination feels, which we'll talk about and actually discuss in a few more slides. So the things that we're putting off are bills, Ken said, when we have to talk to strangers. Absolutely. I'm an introvert too, so I totally get that. When I'm talking with my clients, sometimes it's really long emails that they have to respond to, projects that they know really like their career rides on this one project. And I even had a client one time where I was sitting at his desk. We were looking at like desk organization and time management. And we talked about procrastination. And one of the things that he said was, you know, I've been just putting off going to the doctor. I feel like there's a lump in the back of my throat. And we stopped right there in the session. I was like, okay, we're going to call the doctor right now and we're going to get you an appointment. It turned out that he had procrastinated on going to see the doctor and medical treatment. And the lump that he had in the back of his throat was cancerous. And he caught it in just enough time that they only needed to do minor surgery and a little bit of radiation instead of him procrastinating, not getting the medical treatment that he needed. And it could have gotten really severe, where he could have lost his voice and large portions of his throat. And this is not to scare you, but this is just to remind you that if you've procrastinated on going to the dentist, going to the doctor, and getting medical care, that is one step that you can take from this presentation that could save your life.
So Margot, do men and women procrastinate differently, or is it the same?
I found, and I've worked with both men and women, and I found that it's the same reaction, the same experience. Maybe men and women might procrastinate on different things because they may handle different things, maybe in the household or how they approach work. But in general, the feeling is the same. It's overwhelm, it's stress, it doesn't feel good. So let's talk about why you procrastinate. What are some of the reasons why you procrastinate? If you want to add that into the chat, and Ken can read that out.
Well, I just men make better excuses for procrastinating. Money
Do
is,
they?
I don't know, money, fear, things are overwhelming.
Mm. Yeah, I also hear like things like, I'm afraid I'm going to fail.
Yes.
Boredom, it's a boring task, so I don't want to do it. Or I don't feel clear about like what the next step is.
Don't want to face the outcome.
Mm,
Harder,
huge, right?
yes, yeah. Fear of feel of failure and boredom, being overwhelmed, fear of success.
Just that general feeling of anxiousness too
Yes.
can stop us, you know, like why do we procrastinate and what do we procrastinate on?
Yeah.
And so like, here's what I hear from clients. They have that generalized fear. Certainly there's overwhelm. One thing that wasn't discussed in the chat was perfectionism. So like what I say to my clients, are you striving for excellence or are you struggling for perfection? And if you're struggling for perfection, shifting that mindset to a place where you are taking action and you are striving for excellence. Getting excellent work done is always better than not getting any work done to make it perfect. The other thing that happens is you want to make sure done makes more money than perfect every single time, because we can't reach perfection. We'll never get there. Another thing that holds us back is finishing. So I had this client, when I first walked into her office, we were probably waist deep in paper, boxes of paper everywhere in her office. We'd had sessions where we cleared that paperwork, we got rid of a whole bunch of it, filed away the rest. And at our end of our session, we ended a little bit early and she had 3 boxes left. And she said, don't worry, you don't need to come back. I'll make sure that I get through these 3 boxes. Everything's going to be great. So I reached out to her a week later. How are you doing on those boxes? Haven't gotten to it. 2 weeks, haven't gotten to it. 3 weeks, haven't gotten to it. So finally I'm like, okay, let's set up a session and let's get this done. And I said, there's something, when I went in to see her, I was like, there's something underlying here. What is it? You know, it's more than just putting this off. And she said, you know, my career has been so important to me. It's what I wanted to surround myself in. And now that I'm not surrounded by that, I don't know what's next for me. And, you know, we realized that her thinking and her mindset was so much in the past. And when we could focus in on her opportunities and the fact that she could clear her office for more space for what was happening in her career, that she could move in clearing those 3 boxes. So procrastination can be very deep in our own mindset and thinking, and unlocking that can be very helpful. And lastly, I'll have clients who say, I'm procrastinating because I don't know what to do next. It's not clear from my supervisor what to do, or I can't think through what the next step is. And that's what's holding me back. If I knew what that was, I'd go for it. So overcoming the hurdles for that. Now, if you take a look at this slide, you can see all the different emotions. And Alex brought that up. You know, how does it feel when you procrastinate? Well, imagine you're on your job search and you find the perfect job. Take a look at the bottom right of the screen. You'll see that woman smiling. That's exactly how we feel. Oh, wow, cool. Here's this new job. I can go for it. Then in the next picture, you start telling your friends, you feel really confident, you feel good. Then you start looking at the job description itself. You wait a couple of days because you're not so sure. Now you're really questioning yourself. Am I right for this job? Does my resume really reflect this? Of course it does, but why aren't I working on my resume and getting it out there?
Okay.
And by the time that's all happened,
My friend Yvonne from Rutgers.
Hi, I'm not sure if everyone's on mute.
I did
Okay.
that. I took it.
Thank you. And then what happens is you get to a place where you're anxious, you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, and you don't want to do the work. You can look at that last picture where you can see her furrowed eyebrows and her forehead. You can see the strain in her neck and how awful it feels to procrastinate. Now, I want to tell you about an author who wrote a great book on procrastination. His name is Neil Fiore. He was going to school as a grad student for psychology, but he was also failing all of his classes. What he found was that he was procrastinating, and like those students in the University of Calgary, wasn't getting good grades. So he took all that he learned from psychology and put it towards procrastination and being productive. And he found some very clear techniques to use. And one of the things that he talks about is why and how of procrastination. We talked about why we procrastinate. And what he says in his book is you can talk about why you procrastinate till you're blue in the face. The real key is in finding out how you procrastinate, because that is a very clear behavior. And when you can nail down that behavior, you can then find the times that you're procrastinating and then make the decision to switch. So I have a picture of this beautiful dog. This was my dog. His name was Johnny Be Good. He was a Whippet. Johnny Be Good was more of a plea than it was an actual name. That was his racing name. Johnny got into tons of trouble all the time, but he was one of the fastest Whippets I've ever known. His racer trained him on lure coursing, and he was clocked at 37 miles an hour, and he was third in the nation as one of the fastest dogs for lure course racing. When I got him, he was retired, he was older, and would always get into tons of trouble. But he also led me into trouble because I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That is my work week. And if I'm procrastinating, what I found was my behavior, the how of how I procrastinated, was I would check on the dog. Does the dog need a treat? Let me take him for a walk. Let me fix his blankets while he's sleeping. He was that spoiled. So what I noticed was, okay, how I procrastinate is I take care of the dog. If I'm working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and it's during that time and I'm with the dog, stop, switch it. What am I procrastinating on, and what work can I get into to kind of move my own needle and make sure I'm doing the work that I need to do? I also bring this up because I have been working in productivity for 17 years. I want you to know that I'm not immune to it either. It happens to me too. I understand the stress. I understand the heartache behind it. The difference maybe between me and you is I have all these techniques, all these tools in my toolbox that I can pull out so that I can switch really quickly and move into a place where I'm productive, faster, easier, better, 100% of the time. I want to share what those techniques are with you today. So if we've determined that how you procrastinate is a key point in procrastination, I want to find out from you how you procrastinate. So you can add that to the chat, or you can take yourself off mute and let me know how you procrastinate.
Look for other priorities to address, scroll through social media, surf the web, do easy things, jobs, tasks, check emails,
Yep.
walking away, clean, get distracted by emails, do easier things first, shopping, vacuum the house, Facebook, shop online, talk on the phone, use other tasks to distract me, do anything other than clean house clutter.
That's right. Yeah. So like, I get it.
But-
I love shopping too, right? And isn't that a great way to distract us? Like, push away what we don't want in life and bring in something that is useless and we don't need anyway. I get that. Someone talked about, I do the easy things. And a lot of times when we approach our to-do list, we look for what's easy instead of getting done the most high priority tasks. Someone talked about cleaning, and it's like, you plan to plan to plan, and you plan even more so that you can plan. And in that planning, all you're doing is procrastinating, or you clean to procrastinate. So you sit down at your desk, you're rolling up your sleeves, you're getting ready to do this one thing. oh, but let me clean off my desk. And then you're filing paperwork from like 6 months ago, 2 years ago that you just didn't even have your hands on. And social media is like the biggest rabbit hole known to man. So you all know how you procrastinate. The next time you have an awareness about that, just notice where you are in the moment and then make the choice. What's on my to-do list that I can get to? Not the easiest task, not cleaning off your desk, but what is it that I'm procrastinating on? And how can I take a step forward to move the needle in that? There's another great book, an author. His name is Charles Duhigg, and he wrote The Power of Habit. And he was finding that he was gaining weight. His wife had mentioned it, and he had noticed that like his pants, he just couldn't button up his pants. It was a little uncomfortable. So he's like, where is this coming from? And he started to really look at his day. And he noticed that around like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he would go down to the company cafeteria, he'd get a cookie, and he'd sit with his coworkers and they'd chat for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20, and then he'd head back to work. He felt completely refreshed. He could work the rest of the afternoon into the evening, taking that short break. It was the cookies that he had gained about 10 pounds and eating all those cookies. So he's like, okay, now the cue is the time. I know what time I need to take a break. And my routine is to get a cookie. Well, what if I do something different? What if I go down to the cafeteria and I eat an apple? And he sat with his coworkers, went back to work. The apple just wasn't doing it. So it wasn't related to food. He still couldn't figure it out. So he dug even deeper and he looked at, okay, like what's really going on here? And he started to change the routine. The routine wasn't about going to the cafeteria. He wasn't really hungry. The routine was actually connecting with his coworkers. And when he could connect with his coworkers, he knew that he could get back into work and feel refreshed. So instead of going down to the cafeteria, he chose to walk by the water cooler or go over to the copier, chat with someone there. And then when he had headed back into his work, he was again refreshed. It had nothing to do with the cookie. So it's important for you to define what's the cue, what are you procrastinating on, what's your routine, what's the behavior, and then making a shift and even creating rewards. Because when you create that reward, you'll get back to your work more refreshed. This is really about choosing a different action. And his book, The Power of Habit, is excellent. I strongly suggest reading it. It's a great read. So we're going to be doing an exercise, and this comes from Julie Morgenstern's book, Never Check Email in the Morning, which she suggests it, and so do I. Never check email in the morning. So grab a pen and write down and finish these sentences. I have no problem tackling a difficult project when. I have no problem tackling difficult projects when. So for me, I know I have no problem tackling a difficult project when I know what the clear next step is. And I have all the tools and supplies that I need to move forward on it. Here's another one that you can answer and fill out. Meeting deadlines is easiest for me when. Meeting deadlines is easiest for me when. And I know for me, meeting deadlines is easiest for me when I actually know when the deadline is. If there's no deadline attached to it, I will put it off. I need to have a clear deadline. But once that deadline happens and I know the next actions and I have my supplies, I have a really great setup to jump into that project and to do the work. So now let's look at what's not working and the procrastination piece. So answer this. I procrastinate whenever I have to, what? I procrastinate whenever I have to write that down. So full disclosure here, what I procrastinate on the most is preparing and practicing for presentations like this one. I did practice several times, but it takes a lot. Like I have to get out the supplies. I have to, practice and do the work. It feels uncomfortable to sit in my office alone without having people watch me, right? So I know that I procrastinate whenever I have to practice a presentation. So I know now that I need to prepare early. So last week I got out all the supplies. I just did that one step. The next day, I looked at my presentation. I tweaked it just for you guys. I added some new pictures, all kinds of stuff like that. I took really small steps so that today I could be super prepared. Another set of sentences that you can answer. I have a hard time finishing. I have a hard time finishing. This is a piece I don't struggle too much with. But I know that some of you have a hard time finishing stuff. And the reason why I'm having you write this down on a piece of paper is so that you can start seeing the gap. And the gap can be filled. Because now you know there are certain projects that are difficult that you handle. So what is your setup? How do you set it up to make it work? How do you feel when you're doing the work? You know that with a deadline, your work can become easy. How is it easy? And then applying some of those techniques to actually what is difficult and what you procrastinate on. So you have a setup, you do the work, you know what works for you. Now apply it for the things that don't. So let's dive into some very specific techniques that you can use for procrastination. You first want to tame the inner critic. So Neil Fiore, in his book, The Now Habit, wrote and did studies on procrastination. And in those studies, what they found was that your negative self-talk will increase by up to 80%. So Alex had talked earlier about, procrastination just doesn't feel good. And the reason why it may not be feeling good is the way that you talk to yourself. And I've talked with clients about, okay, what's the inner dialogue here? And they'll say stuff like, I'm a loser. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I put myself in this position again. This is awful. So notice that. And then start talking to yourself in a very gentle way, as if you were talking to a 4-year-old. You would not say, you're stupid, you're a loser, get to work. You would say things like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Let's work on this together. Let me help you here. And your voice would be kinder and gentler. Now, remember when I talked about that client who had that lump in his throat and needed to call his doctor? The technique that we used around that was the 2-minute rule. And the 2-minute rule is if you can get it done in 2 minutes or less, just get it done. So if you need to buy it, burn it, send it, sign it, fax it, and you can do it in 2 minutes or less, just get it done. So that call to the doctor may not have taken 2 minutes. It may have taken maybe 5, but it was important enough to stop what we were doing and get it done. So the 2-minute rule for you is if you can get it done in 2 minutes or less, just get it done. Get it off your plate and you will start feeling like a rock star at work. And also asking questions about what the task entails. What holds people back is that they don't know what to do next. So go to your supervisor, ask them, I'm not exactly sure I understand this. Can you walk it through for me? It may be that you're looking for a job and you have a job coach like Ken, where you can be like, okay, help me break this down. Get me to a place of clarity here. Help me see the roadblocks so I can knock them down. Those are all things you can be asking a job coach and helping you find the perfect job that you're looking for. You also want to grab a partner. So isn't it always better and easier when you have something to do and you can do it with a person that you like? There's tons of people on this call. Reach out to one of them and say, hey, I need a partner. Let's spend time doing some work together and looking for jobs. Let's spend some time fixing our resumes and giving each other feedback. Let's help each other with mock interviews. Grab that partner, grab that friend so that you can move the needle and bust out the procrastination. Stay accountable for the work that you have to do. I run an accountability group, and what we do each day is we write the top 3 priorities in Slack. What are the top 3 things to work on more than anything else? The top 3 things broken down in some really easy steps. And then once a day, we all get on Zoom. We work through, we work for an hour. We take that one task. We work on it for an hour. And at the top of the hour, we all celebrate in our success, which is fantastic, right? Hey, this is how far I got. And what's really awesome is the person who's like, oh, I just have 5 more minutes. I worked with as much urgency as I could. I just need 5 more minutes and I'll complete it. And that's great for them to know. Then they're not putting it off. They take that 5 extra minutes, get it done, and know that it's complete. They take those small steps that they need to take, break it down so they know that how they need to work. And Ken, I just want to throw out a question that would help some of our job seekers out there. What are some of the smaller steps that they can take in terms of their resume or looking for a job that would help them break it down?
If you're asking me, I think the first thing is actually to be kind to yourself too, and not try to do this 40 hours a week every day. Give yourself some breaks to kind of think about things. I talk often about having a job search posse, which is like one step above the job search person, because everyone has differing skills. But above all, have some very attainable tasks. Like you said, maybe it's 3 phone calls. Maybe it's 5 minutes on LinkedIn. You know, the task of getting a job is not a task. I mean, it's an end. You want to break it down so you feel you have an accomplishment. So those are the things I would probably suggest right off the bat.
Yeah, so breaking down that smaller task is really just a fantastic way of approaching it. There's one time that I was giving a presentation and I was talking about, okay, what tasks do you need to do? And there was like this hipster kid in the front row, beard, flannel shirt, total hipster. And I said, who has a task that they need to work on? His hand shot up and he said, I have to create a website for one of my clients. And I said, great, what's the next step? He said, yeah, I have to create that website. I was like, that's not the next step. Let's break this down so that you fully understand it. And so I said, okay, let's come from a place of confidence. Each time you break down a step, you're going to get to a place where you're like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. So I said to him, can you open up your computer and turn it on? And he's like, yeah, I'm a web developer. Okay, so let's open up your computer and turn it on. But like, there's a sense of confidence there, right? And then I was like, okay, what's the next step? The computer's open, it's on, you're ready to go. He said, okay, my next step would be to get into WordPress. And I said, okay, can you do that confidently? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, what's the next step? He's like, I have to grab the content that my client sent me. Okay, can you do that? And he hesitated a little bit, like the confidence was lost. And it was because the next step was to go into email. His client had emailed him. He needed to find the email. He didn't need to get the content that his client, well, he did need to get the content that his client sent him, but that wasn't the true next step. But each time you can hit on the next step and come from a place of confidence, you know that you're on the right track. When you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, especially in procrastination, what happens is the executive functioning, that portion of our brain that handles things like planning, strategic thinking, really clear and clarity, thinking in a clear and having clarity way, is what brings us forward. So making sure that we can relax. So
And say also, just because you don't have to get Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call. You don't have to have a call or a Zoom for every single thing. And it's one of the things I say, give yourself some out of the office time from 1 to 3 o'clock or 2 to 4, whatever it is, and do nothing.
yes, breaks are so important. Like look at Charles Duhigg, right? He found that he just needed to take that short 10-minute break, 15-minute break when he was feeling a lull in his energy, but it brought him through well into the evening of how he could work. Another thing that you can do to kind of trick your brain is you can say, okay, I'm only going to work on this for 5 minutes. You can even set a timer. And when that timer rings, you can say, okay, does it still feel awful? Because if it still feels awful, you can let yourself off the hook and you can just stop and walk away and choose it for another day. But it means that you took 5 minutes to work on that task. Now, if you work for 5 minutes and it feels okay, it's not as bad as you thought, great. Now tack on another 5 minutes and 5 minutes after that and 5 minutes after that. And before you know it, you're 20 minutes into that task. And you may have even completed it or accomplished it. So take that 5 minutes, jump in. If it still feels awful, jump out. But if it feels good, keep doing. Next, what you want to do, and this comes from Neil Fiore's book, sandwich what you need to do but that you don't want to do and you're procrastinating on in between two things that are fun. So you might have like a coffee meeting on Zoom with someone. It's a friend of yours, it's a colleague, it's super fun. Then you get into writing your resume or a cover letter, not so fun. And then you follow it up with maybe taking your dog for a walk, or doing a hobby for half an hour, and taking that break that Ken talked about. Breaks are super important to having energy in your workday, and sandwiching the procrastination piece in between fun can help you get over that hump and break down that hurdle. And then you also want to reward yourself. So when you do procrastinate on something and it gets finished, that you celebrate. So every day at around 3 o'clock, my phone, it will start ringing and blinging and dinging. And that is because I am part of a group of people where every day at 3 o'clock, we celebrate or are grateful for something that's happening in our lives. So we stop, we celebrate, we reward ourselves, we get cheerleaders behind us, people telling us we're doing a great job, all those people in my group. You can form that group as well. This started because one of my friends was in a presentation where they suggested this, and she started this celebration group. We have been going strong for 6 years. 6 years celebrating every day, Monday through Friday. We have helped each other through births and parenting and deaths and good things and bad things in life. And we've celebrated all of those moments together. And you can too. Just be sure that you reward yourself. Now, here's a goofy picture of me. Like I said, I'm a surfer, right? But take a look at what's behind me. There are no waves. There are no big waves. I could have gone to the beach that day and said, there's no reason for me to get out there. There's no reason for me to surf. I could have procrastinated and hung out on the beach and maybe even cracked open a beer with a friend and watched the waves instead. But no, I got out in the water and I had like some great fun. And there was a photographer there who took a picture of me. And like, this is just me being goofy, right? Like, I don't really surf like this. It's just me being my quirky self. But this is a reminder that like, we all have our own little quirks. This is to be who we are in the moment of getting out there and doing something we don't want to do. I did not want to get out in the water when there weren't like really big waves. But I got out there, I had fun anyway, and this is a picture to show that. You get out there too. You make great waves happen. Now we talked about procrastination being a friend. Some of the ways that you can make it become a friend is to get really laser focused. So if you're working on a project, make sure that you turn off your phone, that you get all the notifications off your computer, go somewhere in your home, or if you're doing hybrid work in an office, that you go someplace else and focus in on the work that you've been procrastinating on and only do that work. And then a reminder to relax. Relax so that your executive functioning can move up and it's not quelled by any anxiety or stress. And you can do that just by simply breathing. You can try a technique called box breathing. And box breathing, if you imagine a box in front of you, you're going to breathe in, inhale for 4. So try it with me. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. That can allow you to slow down your breathing. When you slow down your breathing, it tells your brain to relax. When you can relax, you can be in a place where you can fully take on the work. Another thing to do is oftentimes people will procrastinate and a thought will come into their minds or an idea and they'll push it away. What I suggest you do is you actually bring it on. Like set your timer for 5 or 10 minutes and just think about it. You don't have to do anything, just think about it. So my dad is always tinkering around the house. He may be working on a project. And one time I know he was working in the basement on a project. So right when I walked in the house, I walked right down into the basement. I saw all the tools like laid out, but he wasn't there. So I went back upstairs and I went to the living room and he's sitting back on his recliner. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? You said you were going to work on the pipes. He's like, I can't really figure it out. I'm noodling it through. I'm going to come up with 3 or 4 different ways to handle it. And then whatever is the best way, that's what I'm going to work on. So I suggest you do that too. Just take a break, noodle it, think about it. You'll come up with 3 or 4 different things and then choose the one that really ignites you and energizes you the most. And then if you're procrastinating and it's really down to the wire, delegating. If there's anything else that you need to do, you may need to reach out to someone else to help take on some of the work, delegate it, and get it done. So I want to ask you, we have lots of different takeaways, lots of different techniques that you can use. What are some of the things that you will implement in your process of looking for a job when you feel that procrastination is taking control? Write that down if you need to so that you'll remember. Just one takeaway that you can implement. I just want to remind you of the gift that you have that's waiting for you at waveproductivity.com. It is an ebook on productivity challenges, including procrastination. And then I want to open it up for questions. What questions do you have for me around this topic or any topic related to productivity? I'm more than happy to answer it for you.
All right, I'll chime in.
Great.
If you're a morning person versus an evening person, is there a better strategy for procrastination for either one, or is it doesn't really make a difference?
Energy is one of the greatest things that I like to talk about in terms of productivity. And I would not wait until the end of the day. Know where your highest energy, your peak performance is, and then work on those tasks that are much harder that you're procrastinating on, because you'll approach it with far more energy.
Can
And
you also
again,
just go, can you put the previous slide up with the information on the website?
sure,
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
it's waveproductivity.com.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I've been applying the new rule of, just plan to do like a 5-minute stint or a 15-minute stint just to get past that. Oh my God, I've got this huge project.
Yes.
So that'll get me going. I'll get motivated. I'll work on the project for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, depending. My OCD kicks in and all that kind of stuff. And then the next day I'm like burnt out and I can't get that motivation back again. So how do I get out of that cycle?
It's about taking breaks. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but our brains can really only handle about an hour and a half worth of work before it starts to lose concentration. And like, I know that you're saying like you're ramped up, you're really into this, but working for like 5 hours. Okay, imagine if you were doing lunges. Would you do lunges for 5 hours? No, you'd stop and take a break. And breaks are so important in our workday. That's why the next day you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I did so much and I don't have the energy for it.
I'm just so fearful that if I take that break, I'm going to have that hard time getting going again because it takes me so long to.
But it's also your opportunity to refresh, to say, okay, here's another 5-minute stint. And that 5-minute stint, is going to propel you into another hour's worth of work.
Okay.
And also be really clear about what you're going to do on that break. So it might be just like, get up from your desk, get a glass of water and come back. And know where you procrastinate. So if it's around social media, don't get on social media for that break. It can be simple things like look out the window. That eliminates some of the eye strain that we have when we're working on our computers for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So take like 2 minutes, look out your window, connect with a little bit of nature that's happening there, and then head back to your computer and then just refresh.
Okay.
Do
The
some
other question that
stretches.
came up was
Yes.
how to get past, and this is probably very relevant for everyone. How do you get, when you're rejected for a job or you haven't heard back for a while and it's just like one of those days, how do you not procrastinate doing something positive, let's say in the job search?
So again, remember we talked about negative self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? And imagine, what would you say to a 4 or 5-year-old child to help ease some of that rejection? Or are you saying stuff like, there's nothing out there for me. I'll never make it. What am I doing with myself? What's going on? Instead of saying, okay, honey, I'm gonna, it's okay. We can work on this together. Noticing that negative self-talk and being able to shift it. Another thing is, I talked about grabbing a partner. That's the time to reach out to a colleague and saying, hey, look, I've had a really tough day today. Can you just give me some stuff, like give me some love and motivate me and help me out here. Connecting with someone can be an important piece. And then working with people like Ken, who are going to coach you through this process so that not every rejection feels like a complete failure, that you have next steps that you can take to move forward and you have a coach that's helping you do that.
Definitely.
Margot,
Yes,
I
you
have
go.
a question for you.
Yes.
One of the ways that I tend to procrastinate on is if I have to do something that involves utilizing creative juices, like maybe I have to create a document or something. And what is a good way to kind of help me to feel more comfortable about the assignment that I have to do?
So to really unlock that creative energy, I would look at like, what are you doing outside of work to make that happen? Like, what are you doing to play? Like, are you getting out all of your colors, markers, big piece of paper, and just like sketching or drawing out or just like having fun? Or if you have children, like getting one of their games and actually like playing with Legos, right? Because then you get into this creative space and this creative mentality that allows you to bring it forward into work. Again, that's just about like taking a break, right? But if you're not tapping into creative energy outside of work, then how can you tap into it when you need it the most? The way to do that is to keep those floodgates open and allow yourself to be creative in other areas of your life. And I do this because I'm an artist as well. So, you know, I do jewelry fabrication and drawing and painting and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And I have to, if I go dormant for several months without doing that, not only am I frustrated and anxious and it's just not good things are happening, but then when I try and tap into that creativity for work, it's not there. So allowing yourself to be creative in all areas of your life, it just doesn't happen at work. And it's not the kind of thing that you can just like, oh, I'm grabbing it now. Allow it to flow through your whole life.
Great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
Margot, if I show up better when I'm stressed because I'm procrastinating, is that just something that I just trained myself to be able to live in?
Yeah, so I mean, you may feel like you're performing at a better level, but earlier in our talk, we talked about those students who were procrastinating, where ultimately they had poor grades, they had poor performance, they were getting sick. That's the same thing that happens with us. When you're under great levels of stress, your executive functioning will shut down. You may feel like you're in that moment. It's probably because what you have is the stress hormone cortisol and adrenaline coursing through your body to make you feel like you have lots of energy, you feel really good. And all of those stress hormones can be detrimental to your health and to your body functions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Margo, I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any productivity apps that you would recommend that are more than just like a to-do list and a timer that kind of go into, you know, why are you putting off this task? What do you need to move forward on this task? Can you think of any apps out there that are like that?
Not specifically around like, why are you putting off this task? I would say that a lot of the project management and to-do technology or apps are very much the same in the different things that they offer. So like the timer, the to-do list, there's nothing specifically that comes to mind in terms of procrastination. I would say this, I don't spend a ton of my time working on the technology piece. Like I know the majority of apps that are out there and what they can do, but if I spent my time focusing on like what's available out there, that's the only thing I would do in terms of productivity. There's so much out there. I would say this, if you're looking for an app to help with getting things done, finding the interface that feels best to you. Like, do you want something clean and clear and organized? You might want Asana. If you want something where you can move stuff around, you might want Trello. Wunderlist. I had a client who opened up her Wunderlist app and it was like paneling from like the 1970s. And I was like, oh, this is awful. But she loved it. She thought it was like hip and cool and she was into it. So it's like the interface. What does the platform itself look like and feel like, and how easy is it for you to use? That's the biggest things. Yeah. So I know that we could go on with questions. We're right at the hour.
So I want to ask you this, excuse me, Margo, would you be willing to come back as a follow-up and people can kind of share what they've done?
Oh, absolutely. That would be so great. I'd love to hear it. Like we talked about celebrating in your success. So yeah,
Yes, definitely.
absolutely.
We should have a celebration one for sure, definitely.
I love that.
Yes.
So things may come to those who wait, but only the things for those who hustle. So supposedly Abraham Lincoln said that. I can't see Abraham Lincoln saying the word hustle, but I just like the quote so much. I just wanted to include it. So, I mean, you guys have to go out there and hustle. You know the work that you have to do, and those great things will come your way. And I just wanted to share that another picture of you of me surfing. This is in bigger waves. This was during a hurricane. When we got out there, the waves were about 3 feet tall, which was perfect for me. And they get up to 6 feet. So I hustled through those waves and good things came my way. And that's what I hope for you as well, is that good things will come your way because you were going to hustle. Now, there's some ways that we can stay connected.